He'd seen Minho's strength firsthand, and it had only reinforced his determination. That boy is the plasma conduit failed on the 8th day of travel. It was a mechanical failure, nothing dramatic, just an aging component that finally gave out after years of service. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a minor inconvenience: isolate the conduit, reroute power, repair the damage. But the conduit ran directly through the cargo bay where the stasis pods were stored. The explosion was small, contained by automatic systems, but the plasma energy that escaped before containment was enough. It washed over a section of pods, disrupting their power supplies and triggering their emergency protocols. Emergency protocols that included automatic revival. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Vren was in his quarters when it happened, and he ran for the cargo bay immediately. He arrived to find the engineering team already working to contain the plasma leak, but his attention was fixed on the stasis pods. Green status lights were turning amber. Inside the pods, bodies were beginning to move. How many pods were affected? Vren demanded. Preliminary count shows 207, an engineer reported, her voice shaking. The automatic revival sequence has already started. We can't stop it. Alert the captain. Get security teams to the cargo bay. And for the love of the ancestors, tell them not to shoot unless directly threatened. But he knew it was already too late to contain this peacefully. The first colonist to fully wake was a man in his 40s, with graying hair and a military bearing. His eyes opened, assessed the situation in seconds, and he moved with the precision of someone trained for crisis situations. He broke his pod's canopy, not violently but efficiently, and stepped out into chaos. More colonists were waking around him. Some were confused, frightened. Others were children, crying for parents who might not have woken yet. The man took charge immediately, his voice calm but commanding. Everyone stay calm. Check the people near you. Help anyone who needs it. Do not leave this area. We need to figure out what's happening. Vren recognized the voice from the logs, Dae-hyun, the former security chief who had written those final, desperate entries. The man who had tried to keep the colony safe as it spiraled toward its difficult decision. Dae-hyun spotted Vren and approached, moving with controlled grace that somehow seemed more dangerous than Minho's fearful fumbling. You're Velrathi, Dae-hyun said in perfect standard Galactic. You found the colony. You woke us. There was an accident. Vren started. Where are we? What ship is this? Where are the others? You're aboard the Velrathi vessel Morning Light. The other colonists are still in stasis. You're being transported to the Confederation capital for study. Dae-hyun's voice went flat. We're specimens. Behind him, more colonists were fully awake now. Vren counted quickly. At least 50 already conscious, more emerging from their pods every moment. Among them he saw a young woman with fierce eyes, a teenage boy who looked terrified, children clinging to adults they hoped were their parents. Yuna, Seojun, Jisoo, Yoonji. Names from the logs. People who had lived through the colony's final days and made the choice to sleep rather than doom the galaxy. Please, Vren said, we need to establish communication with my captain before. The cargo bay doors burst open and security teams flooded in, weapons raised and charged. Everyone freeze, shouted the security chief. That was the moment everything went wrong. A young colonist, maybe 13 years old, panicked at the sight of armed soldiers. She ran toward what she thought was cover, moving fast, far too fast for a child her age. A nervous security officer fired. The energy bolt hit her in the shoulder and she went down screaming. Dae-hyun moved. Vren barely saw it happen. One moment Dae-hyun was standing beside him. The next he was across the cargo bay, placing himself between the wounded child and the security team. He hadn't run. He'd simply moved faster than eyes could properly track. Don't shoot, Dae-hyun roared. She's a child. Stand down. But the security teams were terrified now. They'd seen how fast he moved. They fired again, multiple officers opening up with their weapons. The energy bolts hit Dae-hyun's center mass. He staggered but didn't fall. His clothes smoked where the bolts had hit, but his skin beneath was merely reddened, not burned through. He looked down at himself in dismay. We don't want to fight you, he said, his voice pained. We're not your enemies. But the security chief saw only a threat that could shrug off multiple direct hits. He ordered his teams to concentrate fire. What happened next was chaos. The colonists didn't attack, not at first. They defended. They moved to protect the wounded child, to shield each other from weapons fire. But their defense was devastating. When a colonist grabbed a weapon to prevent it from firing, the weapon crumpled. When they pushed security officers away, those officers flew across the room. Una, the young woman with fierce eyes, ran toward the engineering section where a ruptured conduit was still venting plasma. She reached into the plasma stream with her bare hands and bent the metal piping to seal it. Her hands blistered and burned, but she held the pipe shut until the automatic systems engaged, then stepped back as her hands healed in front of everyone's eyes. Seojin caught a security officer who had been knocked into a bulkhead, cushioning the impact that would have broken the Velrothi's back. He set the officer down carefully and said, "Please stop shooting. We're trying to help." Jisoo, who couldn't have been more than 16, calculated a path through the chaos and guided frightened colonists to safety. She called out trajectories in danger zones, her voice calm and clear even as energy weapons discharged around her. Within minutes, the colonists controlled the cargo bay, not because they'd fought for it, but because the Velrothi couldn't stop them. Every security officer had been disarmed or disabled without serious injury. The colonists had moved with precision and care, using only as much force as necessary to end the threat. But the ship's crew saw only their own defeat. Saw beings that could move faster than they could react, that could survive their weapons, that could break their equipment without effort. They saw monsters. On the bridge, Captain Thalos watched through security cameras, his expression dark. "Seal the cargo bay," he ordered. "Lock it down completely, and send a distress signal to the Confederation fleet. Tell them we have a hostile force aboard and require immediate military support." "Sir, they're not hostile," Vren protested, standing beside the captain. "They defended themselves. They could have killed everyone in that bay, but they didn't. They've taken control of part of my ship. That makes them hostile." The signal is sent. Fleet assets are already responding. 3 warships will intercept us within 12 hours. In the cargo bay, Daehyun examined the sealed doors and understood what was happening. They were trapped, contained, and reinforcements were coming. He gathered the awakened colonists around him. There were 207 of them now, ranging from children to elderly, from 3rd generation to 8th generation. Some were powerful enough to tear through the ship's hull with their hands. Others were only moderately enhanced, scared and confused about everything that had happened. "We need a plan," said Unji, a woman in her 30s who Vren recognized from the logs as someone who had accidentally destroyed part of her house once. "They're bringing more ships, more weapons. We can break out," suggested a young man. "These doors won't hold us, and go where?" Daehyun asked. "We're on a ship in deep space. Even if we take control of the entire vessel, what then? We don't know how to operate it. We don't know where we are, and we'd have to hurt people to do it. So we just sit here and wait for them to attack us again?" Yuna's hands were still healing from the plasma burns, skin regenerating in real time. "We negotiate," Daehyun said firmly. "We open communication with their captain. We explain the situation. We offer a peaceful solution." He approached the nearest communication panel and activated it. "Captain of the Morning Light, this is Daehyun of New Jeju Colony. We are not your enemies. We don't want to fight. We're asking you to take us back to our planet and let us return to stasis. This doesn't have to end badly." Thalos's voice came back cold and clipped. "You've seized control of part of my ship and injured my crew. You will surrender immediately or face military action. Your crew fired first. We defended ourselves. The only injuries are to the child your officer shot and to us from your weapons. We've harmed no one. Surrender or be destroyed." The communication cut off. Daehyun stood silent for a long moment, then turned to the other colonists. "They're not going to listen," he said quietly. "They're too afraid of us. They see weapons, not people." "Then we fight," Una said. "We take the ship." "No." The voice came from the back of the group. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. An elderly woman was emerging from one of the damaged pods. She moved slowly, weakly, clearly in distress. Colonists rushed to support her, but she waved them off with trembling hands. "Hijin," Daehyun stared in shock. "Your pod was damaged. You shouldn't have woken. The revival wasn't complete. You're dying." Hijin finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know, I can feel it. The stasis damage is too severe. But I'm awake long enough to stop you from making a terrible mistake." She looked around at all the frightened faces, all the powerful people who didn't want to use their power. I need to speak to everyone, she said. All ship. The morning light traveled for 6 days before Captain Thalos decided it was time for the first awakening. The cargo holds had been converted into a temporary laboratory, with one pod separated from the others and connected to medical monitoring equipment. Vren stood in the observation room, watching through reinforced glass as the medical team prepared for the procedure. He had argued against this, argued that they should wait until reaching the Confederation capital where proper facilities and security existed. But Thalos wanted preliminary data, wanted to see one of the enhanced humans awake and functioning before presenting them to the Science Council. We've chosen a low-risk subject, the head medical officer reported. Male, age 17 at time of stasis, 6th generation colonist. Name is Minho according to records, 6th generation. Vren remembered what Hyejin's logs had said about that generation. Enhanced strength, rapid healing, heightened senses. Not as extreme as later generations, but still far beyond normal human capabilities. The pod's revival sequence is automated, the medical officer continued. We're just triggering it. The colonist designed the system to handle awakening safely. Thalos leaned forward in his chair. Begin the procedure. The medical officer input commands into the pod's control system. The status lights changed from green to amber. Inside the pod, Minho's body began to show signs of activity. His chest rose and fell with deeper breaths. His fingers twitched. Vital signs increasing, reported a technician. Brain activity rising. Consciousness returning. Vren watched Minho's face as awareness slowly returned. The young man's eyes moved beneath closed lids. His mouth opened slightly, and then his eyes snapped wide open. For a moment, Minho just stared at the ceiling of the pod, confused and disoriented. Then he seemed to remember where he was, what had happened. His expression shifted from confusion to horror. He started screaming. The sound was muffled by the pod's still-sealed canopy, but it was clearly a scream of pure terror. Minho thrashed inside the pod, his body convulsing. The medical staff rushed forward with sedatives, but the pod's automated systems were already responding. Restraints deployed soft but firm, holding Minho's limbs in place. What's wrong with him? Thalos demanded. Possible adverse reaction to the revival process, the medical officer said, though he sounded uncertain. Or psychological trauma from extended stasis. It's impossible to know without further examination. The pod's canopy opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Minho gasped for air, his chest heaving. The medical team approached carefully, speaking in calm voices, trying to soothe him. It's okay, you're safe, one of them said. You're aboard the Velrathi ship Morning Light. We've revived you from stasis. Can you understand me? Minho's eyes focused on the speaker. He tried to talk but only managed a choked sob. Then he looked down at the restraints holding him in the pod, and something changed in his expression. The fear shifted to determination. Wait, don't, the medical officer started to say. Minho pulled against the restraints. Not violently, not like he was trying to escape. More like he was testing them, seeing how strong they were. The restraints were rated to hold 3 times normal human strength. They were made of woven synthetic fibers stronger than steel cables. They snapped like old thread. Minho sat up suddenly, and the entire pod lurched to one side. He looked at his hands, at the broken restraints dangling from his wrists, and his expression crumbled. No, 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 he whispered. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to. I'm sorry. He tried to stand, but he was weak from stasis, and his legs wouldn't support him. He fell, reaching out to catch himself on a nearby medical cart. His hand closed on the cart's metal frame, and the metal crumpled like paper under his grip. The medical staff backed away, terrified. Minho looked at the destroyed cart and started to cry. I can't control it, he said in broken standard Galactic, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to be gentle anymore. None of us do. Why did you wake me? Why didn't you leave us sleeping? In the observation room, Thalos stood abruptly. Get a containment team down there now. Sir, wait, Vren said. He's not attacking anyone. He's scared and confused. We need to. He just destroyed medical equipment and restraints without trying. Imagine what he could do if he actually wanted to cause harm. Containment. Now. Security officers rushed into the medical bay, weapons drawn. Minho saw them and raised his hands in surrender, still crying. Please don't shoot, he begged. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I'm trying so hard to be careful, please. The security team formed a circle around him, weapons trained on his chest. Minho stayed very still. his whole body trembling with the effort of controlling his movements. "Back into the pod," ordered the security chief. Slowly, Minho obeyed, moving with exaggerated care. Each step was carefully placed, each movement slow and controlled. But even his careful movement seemed too fast, too precise. There was an inhuman quality to the way he moved, like watching a predator pretend to be prey. "Secure him in the medical isolation chamber," Thalos ordered, "and get someone who speaks Korean. We need to question him properly." They moved Minho to a reinforced chamber designed for quarantine situations. The walls were thick composite armor. The door was sealed with magnetic locks, and security cameras covered every angle. Minho sat on the examination table, his head in his hands, still crying softly. Vren volunteered to talk to him. He'd studied human languages as part of his xenoarchaeology training, and he spoke serviceable Korean. More importantly, he felt responsible. He'd failed to stop this awakening. The least he could do was treat the boy with some dignity. He entered the isolation chamber alone, against protocol. Minho looked up, saw the alien scientist, and flinched. "I'm not going to hurt you," Vren said in Korean. "I'm here to talk." "You speak Korean?" Minho's voice was hoarse from crying. "A little. I studied human cultures. I've read about Old Earth, about the Korean people. Your ancestors were remarkable." "Were," Minho repeated bitterly. Past tense. "Because we don't exist anymore, do we? You found the colony, found us sleeping, and you woke us up. Just you so far. The others are still in stasis." Minho's head snapped up. "How many others?" "How many did you take?" Vren hesitated. "All of them. 15,000 pods. We're transporting them to the Confederation capital for study." "Study?" The word dripped with disgust. "We're not experiments. We're people. We were people." "You still are people," Vren said gently. "Are we?" Minho stood up, and despite trying to move carefully, the movement was too fast, too fluid. "Look at me. I've been trying to sit still, trying to be gentle, and I've already broken equipment, destroyed restraints, terrified your crew. This is me being careful. This is me trying not to hurt anyone." He held up his hand, studying it like it belonged to someone else. "When I was 14, I was playing with my little sister. Just playing, running around, laughing. I tagged her, just a gentle tap on the shoulder. I broke her collarbone. I didn't mean to. I was being gentle. But gentle for me isn't gentle for normal people anymore. After that, I stopped touching people, stopped playing, stopped doing anything that might hurt someone. We all did. The whole sixth generation, we learned to hold back, to move slowly, to never ever forget that we were dangerous. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough." He looked at Vren with eyes that were far older than his 17 years. "That's why we went to sleep, because every generation got stronger, faster, more powerful. My children would have been worse than me. Their children would have been unstoppable. Where does it end? When do we stop being human and become something else?" "Your administrator, Soman, she left a message," Vren said. "I watched it. She said you found ruins on the planet. An older civilization," Minho nodded, "in the caves. They were like us, changed by the planet, made powerful, and they destroyed themselves. Their cities, their culture, everything. Gone. Because they became too powerful to exist together peacefully. We didn't want that to happen to us, didn't want to become the thing that destroyed the galaxy, so we chose to remove ourselves from it. It was the hardest decision anyone ever made, but it was the right one." He sat back down, his movements careful again. "And now you've undone it. You've taken us from our tomb and you're bringing us to your capital. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "The captain believes—" "I don't care what your captain believes," Minho interrupted. "He sees weapons. He sees advantages. He sees power he can use. But he doesn't understand what that power costs, what it does to people." He looked directly at Vren. "Please, I'm begging you. Turn the ship around. Take us back to New Jeju. Let us return to sleep. This was your mistake, but it's not too late to fix it, please." Vren wanted to say yes, wanted to march to the bridge and demand Thalos abort the mission. But he had no authority, no power to change anything. "I'll try," he said finally. "I'll talk to the captain again. He won't listen." Minho's voice was flat, defeated. "Men like him never do. They see what they want and ignore everything else." "Maybe, but I have to try." Minho studied him for a long moment. "You're a good person. I can tell. Thank you for treating me like a human being instead of a specimen." Vren left the isolation chamber with a heavy heart. He went straight to the bridge to make one last appeal to Thalos. But the captain had already made his decision. Captain Thalos turned to him with an expression Vren had never seen before, cold calculation mixed with burning ambition. "Are you insane?" The argument continued for hours, but Thalos held all the authority. He ordered the excavation teams to go deeper, to find the stasis chambers mentioned in Taehyun's logs. Vren had no choice but to comply, though every instinct screamed at him to refuse. They found the entrance 3 days later. It was buried under 30 meters of rock and soil, sealed behind doors that made the upper levels look flimsy by comparison. These weren't just locked, they were designed to withstand military-grade weapons. The colonists hadn't wanted anyone getting in. "This is wrong," Vren said as Kren prepared to override the door controls. "Captain, I'm begging you. These people made a choice. We should respect it." "Your objection is noted in the log," Thalos replied coldly. "Now open the door." The mechanism groaned and screamed as ancient motors fought against 2 centuries of inactivity. Finally, with a sound like thunder, the massive doors began to slide apart. Air rushed out, equalized pressure, and the team's sensors went crazy with readings. Power. Massive amounts of power, all active, all running continuously for over 200 years. They descended into a chamber so vast that their lights couldn't reach the far walls. As they moved forward, automatic systems activated, and lights began to glow throughout the enormous space. Vren stopped walking and just stared. Rows upon rows of stasis pods stretched in every direction, arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Each pod was roughly the size of a coffin, made of transparent material that showed the person sleeping inside. Status lights blinked steadily on every pod, green showing active stasis, stable life signs, no degradation. "By the ancestors," Mira whispered. "There are thousands of them. 15,347, Kren read from his scanner. All active, all drawing power from a geothermal tap that goes down over 3 kilometers. The engineering is incredible. This system could run for another 1,000 years without maintenance." Vren walked slowly down the nearest row, looking at the faces inside the pods. Men, women, children, elderly, every age, every stage of life. They looked peaceful, as if merely asleep. Families were grouped together, their pods arranged in small clusters. He saw a couple holding hands through the transparent material, their pods positioned so they could touch. These weren't monsters. They were people who had made an impossible choice, to exile themselves from existence rather than risk harming others. "Start cataloging them," Thalos ordered. "I want complete scans of every pod. Medical data, genetic profiles, everything." "Sir, we can't," Vren started. "We can and we will. This is the greatest discovery in Velrathi history. These humans represent centuries of natural genetic enhancement. The medical applications alone are worth more than our entire fleet. If we can understand what changed them, replicate it, control it." "They couldn't control it," Vren interrupted. "That's why they're here. That's why they sealed themselves away." Talos ignored him. "I want these pods transported to the ship. All of them." The work took weeks. The pods were heavy, their stasis systems complex and delicate. They had to be moved carefully, kept powered at all times, maintained in perfect environmental conditions. The morning light wasn't designed to carry 15,000 stasis pods, so they had to retrofit the cargo holds, remove unnecessary equipment, maximize every centimeter of space. Vren supervised the transfer personally, ensuring each pod was handled with care. Whatever he thought of Thalos's decision, he wouldn't let carelessness harm the sleeping colonists. They deserved better than that. During the transfer, he found the administrative pod, a special chamber separated from the main rows. Inside was an elderly woman, her face lined with age and care. A plaque on the pod identified her as Soman, Colony Administrator Final Council Chair. There was a data terminal connected to her pod. Vren accessed it and found one last message, recorded just before she entered stasis. Her face appeared on the screen, tired but calm. She spoke in Korean, but the translator provided text. "My name is Soman. I am the last administrator of New Jeju, and I am recording this message for anyone who might find us in the future. I hope no one does. I hope we sleep here undisturbed until the end of time. But if you're watching this, then our safeguards failed, and I need you to understand what you found. We are not specimens. We are not weapons. We are not a resource to be exploited. We are human beings who became something we never wanted to be, something dangerous, something that had no place in the civilized galaxy. The planet changed us. We don't fully understand how, but some combination of microorganisms, environmental factors, and time rewrote our genetic code over generations. Our children were born stronger. Their children were stronger still, each generation more capable than the last, more powerful, less compatible with normal human existence. We tried to adapt. We tried to control it, but you can't stop evolution, and you can't contain power that grows exponentially. My great-great-grandchildren could shatter steel with their bare hands. They could run faster than vehicles, calculate problems that needed computers, heal from wounds that should have been fatal, and their children would have been even more powerful. Do you understand what I'm saying? This wasn't a gift. It was a curse that kept getting worse. Where does it end? What would the 10th generation have been capable of? The 20th? Would they have been gods? Would they have lost their humanity entirely? We looked into the deep caves beneath our colony, and we found something there. Ruins of another civilization. They evolved on this planet too, long before we arrived. They became powerful like us, stronger and stronger over generations. We found their cities buried under kilometers of rock. We found their weapons. We found their bones, scattered across battlefields that covered continents. They destroyed themselves. Their power grew until they couldn't coexist anymore, and they tore their entire civilization apart in wars that cracked the planet's crust. We realized we were on the same path. In another few generations, our descendants would be so powerful that conflict between them would devastate worlds. They would spread across the galaxy, carrying the microorganisms with them, changing more people, creating more enhanced humans who would have enhanced children who would have godlike descendants. And eventually, inevitably, there would be war, because power without limit always leads to conflict, and conflict between beings that powerful would destroy everything. So we chose to stop. We chose to end our line, to seal ourselves away, to become a footnote in history rather than the cause of galactic catastrophe. It was not an easy choice. Many argued against it, but in the end, mercy won. If you've found us, you face a choice. You can wake us, study us, try to use what we've become for your own purposes. But I'm telling you now, you will regret it. The power we carry is a poison that spreads through generations. You cannot contain it. You cannot control it. You can only become victims of it. Or you can leave us sleeping. Respect our choice. Let us remain the people we were, frozen at this moment, neither monsters nor gods. Just humans who loved their families enough to give up everything. Please, let us sleep. Let this be where humanity ends. Not in extinction, but in the peaceful choice to step aside for the good of all. The message ended. Salman's face faded from the screen. Bren stood in silence, her words echoing in his mind. Then he turned and walked quickly toward the bridge, determination in every step. He found Thalos in his command chair, reviewing transport schedules. "Captain, you need to watch something," Vren said, holding up a data chip containing Salman's message. "If this is another objection, just watch it, please." Thalos sighed, but took the chip and inserted it into his console. Vren watched the captain's face as Salman's message played, looking for any sign of doubt, any hint of reconsideration. When it ended, Thalos removed the chip and handed it back. "A very moving speech," he said. "Admirable, even. These humans were noble and self-sacrificing. But that doesn't change anything. The Velrathi Confederation is at a critical point in our history. The Drath Empire grows stronger every year while we grow weaker. We need an advantage, something to tip the balance. These colonists represent that advantage." "They represent a warning," Vren countered. "Didn't you listen? The planet's previous inhabitants destroyed themselves with this same power. That's because they were primitive and couldn't manage it properly. We're more advanced. We'll be more careful. Captain, enough. The pods are being loaded now. In 3 days, we'll be underway to the Confederation capital. The Science Council will study the colonists and determine the best way to utilize their genetic advantages. This discussion is over." Vren wanted to argue more, but he knew it was pointless. Thalos had made his decision and nothing would change it. The captain saw glory and advancement, not danger and responsibility. That night, as the last pods were loaded into the cargo holds, Vren stood in the chamber on New Jeju and looked at the empty spaces where 15,000 people had slept for 2 centuries. The geothermal reactor still hummed below, powering nothing now. The warning beacons on the surface still broadcast their message to empty air. He had failed them. failed to honor their sacrifice, failed to respect their choice. All he could do now was try to minimize the damage. The morning lig. The planet appeared on their sensors like a ghost from the past. Captain Thalos stood on the bridge of the morning light, his 3 eyes fixed on the green and blue world rotating slowly on the main screen. The Velrathi had explored this sector twice before, and both times they had found nothing. But their new scanners were better now, more sensitive, and they had picked up something strange. "Captain, I'm reading electromagnetic patterns," said Kren, the data specialist. His fingers moved across his console, pulling up numbers and graphs. "They're weak, but they're definitely artificial. Someone built something down there." Thalos felt his heart rate increase. New discoveries were rare these days. The galaxy had been picked clean by a dozen different species over thousands of years. Finding anything new meant credits, prestige, maybe even a promotion. "Can you identify the source?" Thalos asked. Kren shook his head. "Too much interference from the planet's atmosphere. We'll need to go down and look." The captain turned to his science officer, a tall Velrathi named Vren. "Prepare a landing team. I want to know what's down there." 3 hours later, Vren stood in the cargo bay checking his equipment one last time. He had been a xenoarchaeologist for 20 years, and he had learned to be careful. Old ruins could be dangerous. Ancient security systems, unstable structures, toxic materials. The list went on. But he loved his work. Every new site was a puzzle waiting to be solved. The shuttle dropped through the clouds, and Vren got his first look at the surface. Dense jungle covered everything. Trees with purple leaves grew so thick that the ground was barely visible, but his scanner showed something else. Straight lines cutting through the chaos of nature. Buildings, roads, a settlement. "There," said Mira, the scout officer piloting the shuttle. She pointed at a clearing ahead. "That's where the signals are strongest." They landed in what had once been a plaza. Vren could see the remains of paving stones beneath the vegetation. Structures surrounded them, most collapsed or swallowed by the jungle, but some still standing. The architecture was strange, not like anything he had seen from the major species. "Spread out," Vren ordered his team. "Record everything. Don't touch anything until I've cleared it." He approached the nearest building carefully. The walls were made of some kind of composite material, weathered but still intact. There were markings on the surface, symbols he didn't recognize at first. Then his translator chimed. It had found a match. Human. This was a human colony. Vren felt a chill run through his body. Humans had vanished from the galaxy almost 200 years ago. They had built a dozen colonies spread across several systems, and then nothing. No more ships, no more transmissions. The Great Silence, historians called it. Every human world had gone dark at roughly the same time. Most species assumed they had destroyed themselves in some war or plague. Humans had been aggressive, territorial, always fighting among themselves. It made sense that they would eventually wipe themselves out. But here was a human colony no one had known about. A colony that might hold answers. "Vren, you need to see this," called Mira from across the plaza. He hurried over to find her standing in front of a metal pillar, half buried in soil and vines. It was smooth, almost new-looking, with a small display screen on its surface. The screen was active, glowing faintly. "It's a beacon," Mira said, still running on some kind of power source. Vren studied the display. Text scrolled across it in 2 languages. The first was Old Earth Korean. The second was Standard Galactic, the trade language most species used. The message was simple and terrifying. Do not excavate. Do not wake them. Them? Mira whispered. Who's them? Vren didn't answer. He was looking at the date stamp on the beacon. It had been broadcasting this warning for 212 years, running continuously, never stopping, powered by some source that hadn't failed in over 2 centuries. Contact the ship, Vren said. Tell the captain we need to talk. Back on the morning light, Thalos listened to Vren's report with growing interest. A human colony abandoned but not destroyed. A warning beacon that told them to stay away. It was all very mysterious, and mysteries meant value. What do you recommend? Thalos asked. We leave, Vren said immediately. The humans put that beacon there for a reason. We should respect the warning. The humans are gone, Thalos replied. They don't get to tell us what to do with abandoned property. This colony is a treasure of scientific and historical knowledge. We'd be fools to walk away. Captain, please, your concerns are noted, Vren, but I'm ordering the excavation to continue. I want that colony searched thoroughly. Find out what happened here. Find out what they were hiding. Vren wanted to argue, but he knew it was useless. Talos was ambitious, always had been. He saw this discovery as his ticket to bigger things, and nothing would change his mind. The science team returned to the surface the next day with better equipment. They set up a base camp in the plaza and began systematic exploration of the ruins. The work was slow. The jungle had claimed most of the colony, and they had to cut through layers of vegetation to reach the buildings. On the third day, they found the entrance to the underground levels. It was sealed behind a massive door made of the same composite material as the buildings. The door had no visible lock, no handle, no way to open it from the outside. But Kren managed to tap into the power system and override the controls. The door opened with a groan of ancient motors. Stale air rushed out, carrying the smell of metal and something else Vren couldn't identify. His scanner showed stable atmosphere, no toxins, no biological hazards. But he felt uneasy. The warning beacon had been clear, do not excavate. They were excavating. Vren led the team down a ramp into darkness. Emergency lights flickered to life as they descended, triggered by their movement. The underground facility was huge, much bigger than the surface settlement. Corridors branched in every direction, leading to rooms and chambers carved deep into the bedrock. And everywhere, on every wall, were more warnings. Written in Korean, in Standard Galactic, and a dozen other languages, some were official notices, stamped with administrative seals. Others were handwritten, desperate messages scrawled in what looked like blood. Turn back. Seal the doors. Don't let anyone find us. God forgive us for what we've become. The team moved deeper into the facility. They passed living quarters, workshops, medical labs, all abandoned but surprisingly well preserved. In some rooms, meals still sat on tables. Tools still lay on workbenches. It was as if everyone had simply stopped what they were doing and walked away. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the center of the underground complex. The doors were reinforced, built to withstand tremendous force. Kren worked his technical magic again, and the doors slid open. Inside was a room filled with computer terminals, all surrounding a large cylindrical structure in the center. The structure hummed with power, and status lights blinked across its surface. "It's a data archive," Kren said, his voice filled with wonder. "And it's still active." Vren approached the nearest terminal. The screen lit up at his touch, displaying a menu in Korean and Standard Galactic. He selected the first option, Colony History. The screen filled with files, hundreds of them. Logs, records, personal journals, all documenting the life of the colony, from its founding to its mysterious end. Vren selected the oldest file and began to read. Behind him, his team gathered around other terminals, accessing more records. None of them noticed the small status display on the cylindrical structure. The display that showed the archive doing something it hadn't done in 2 centuries. It was transmitting a signal. Deep underground to something sealed far below them. A wake-up call. Kren worked through the night, restoring corrupted data files and rebuilding damaged records. The archive was old, and time had not been kind to its storage systems. But whoever built it had done excellent work. Most of the data was still recoverable. By morning, he had assembled a timeline of the colony's history. He called Vren and Captain Thalos to review his findings. The colony was called New Jeju, Kren explained, displaying information on a large screen. Founded 312 years ago by the colony ship Taegukgi. Initial population was 15,000 people, mostly Korean families looking for a fresh start. 15,000 is a large colony, Thalos observed. They must have had good funding. They did, Kren confirmed. The early records show they had everything they needed. Advanced terraforming equipment, manufacturing facilities, enough supplies to last decades. They weren't just surviving. They were building a real civilization. Vren studied the screen, looking at images of the colony in its prime. Happy families, children playing in parks, workers building new structures. It looked peaceful, hopeful. So what happened? "I've organized the records by author," Kren said. 3 people kept the most detailed logs. "I think we should start with them." The first set of logs belonged to someone named Ji-won. She had been the colony's chief engineer, responsible for maintaining all the critical systems. Her entries covered the first 50 years of the colony's existence. Vren read them carefully, looking for clues. The early entries were exactly what he expected. Technical reports about power systems, water treatment, agricultural output. Boring but necessary documentation. But Jiwon also included personal observations, little notes about daily life that brought the colony to life. Year 5. The first children born here took their first steps today. Little Minho walked all the way across the community center without falling once. His parents were so proud. Year 12. We've expanded the residential area to accommodate 60 new families. The birth rate is higher than we expected. The medical team says the environment here is extremely healthy. Year 23. Celebrated Harvest Festival today. Our food production exceeded targets by 30%. We're completely self-sufficient now. Earth feels very far away. Year 34. The second generation is growing up so fast. They're taller than their parents, stronger too. Dr. Heejin says it's probably the different gravity and atmospheric composition. Their bodies are adapting. That entry made Vren pause. Adapting. That was an interesting word choice. The logs continued in the same positive tone for years. New buildings, successful harvests, growing population, everything seemed perfect. Then in year 47, Jiwon's entries changed. Year 47. Dr. Hyejin asked me to install monitoring equipment in the youth dormitory. She won't say why, but she seems concerned about something. I've never seen her worried before. Year 49. There was an incident at the manufacturing plant. Young Daehyun, only 17 years old, accidentally broke through a security door. He said he tripped and put his hand out to catch himself. The door was solid steel, rated to withstand industrial equipment. He punched a hole straight through it. He seemed as shocked as everyone else. Year 50. Hyejin called a meeting with the council. She presented data about the third generation, the children born here. Their muscle density is 3 times human normal. Their bone structure is fundamentally different, denser and more flexible. Their reaction times are faster than any human on record. She says they're still human, genetically speaking. But the planet is changing them somehow. The council decided to study the issue but keep it quiet. No need to panic people. That was Jiwon's last entry. Vren sat back, processing what he had read. The planet was changing them, making them stronger, faster, different. Pull up the next set of logs, he told Kren. The second collection belonged to Hyejin, the head physician Jiwon had mentioned. Her records covered years 51 through 89, and they were much more clinical than Jiwon's personal observations. Hyejin documented everything with scientific precision. Measurements, genetic analyses, comparative studies. The third generation children weren't just stronger, they were evolving at an incredible rate. Each generation showed more changes than the last. Year 62. The fourth generation is beginning to show abilities we can't explain through standard biology. Yuna, age 8, demonstrated the ability to perceive electromagnetic fields. She can see power flowing through wires, sense electronic devices through walls. Several other children show similar abilities. Year 71. Testing confirms our worst fears. The changes are accelerating. Fifth generation children show enhanced cognitive function, rapid healing, sensory capabilities far beyond human norms. One child, Seojun, fell from a 2-story building. He walked away with bruises that healed completely within hours. Year 79. We've identified the cause. Indigenous microorganisms in the soil and water. They're harmless to adult humans. Our immune systems adapted long ago. But they interact with developing fetuses, rewriting genetic code in subtle ways. Every generation born here is more affected than the last. Year 84. The council is divided. Some want to call for evacuation, return to Earth, warn them about what's happening. Others argue we should stay, study the phenomenon, learn to control it. I don't know what's right anymore. These children are still human. They laugh, they play, they love their families. But they're also becoming something else. Year 89. I'm retiring from active duty. I'm too old to keep up with the changes anymore. Taehyun is taking over security coordination. I've briefed him on everything we know. God help him. God help us all. Vren felt cold. He looked at Thalos, who was watching the screen with intense interest. Sir, we need to stop the excavation, Vren said. This is obviously leading somewhere dangerous. It's leading somewhere fascinating, Thalos corrected. Pull up the third set of logs. Taehyun's records were disturbing from the very first entry. As security chief, he had seen things the others hadn't, dealt with situations they had covered up. Year 90. First day on the job and already dealing with a crisis. Yoonji, a sixth-generation teenager, got angry during an argument with her parents. She hit the wall. She didn't just damage it, she punched through load-bearing concrete, brought down part of the house. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but Yoonji is traumatized. She doesn't know her own strength. None of them do. Year 95. Implementing new building codes. All structures must now be reinforced to withstand forces 3 times previous standards. We're not protecting the buildings from external threats. We're protecting them from the people who live inside. Year 102. The 7th generation is different. They're smarter than us, faster than us, stronger than us in ways that terrify me. Yesterday I watched 10-year-old Jisoo calculate orbital mechanics in her head faster than our computers. She wasn't trying to show off. She was helping her teacher fix a satellite dish. Year 108. We had our first death today. Not from age or disease, from an accident during a sporting event. 2 teenagers colliding at full speed. The impact would have killed normal humans instantly. These kids walked away with broken bones that started healing before we got them to medical. But one bystander got hit by debris, dead instantly. We're too dangerous to be around normal people. Year 115. Some of the council want to send a ship to Earth, warn them, ask for help. I've convinced them that's the worst thing we could do. If Earth learns about us, what do you think happens? Best case, they quarantine us. Worst case, they decide we're a threat and sterilize the planet from orbit. We can't risk it. The entries grew darker, more desperate. Taehyun documented increasing incidents, more injuries, more near disasters. The colony was trying to adapt to having a population of superhumans, but it wasn't working. Year 120. Emergency council meeting. There was a fight between 2 young men. Just a stupid argument over a girl. They destroyed 3 buildings, 20 people injured. The fighters didn't mean to cause that much damage, they were just angry, throwing punches like in any normal fight. But their punches break walls. Their rage levels structures. We can't keep living like this. We can't integrate back into normal human society. We're too dangerous. We can't spread to other worlds. We'd carry the microorganisms with us, change more people. We can't stay here as we are. Each generation is more powerful than the last, and we're losing the ability to coexist safely. The council has made a decision. We're building stasis chambers, all of them. Enough for the entire population. We're going to seal ourselves away, put ourselves to sleep. Maybe in a few centuries medical science will advance enough to cure us, to reverse the changes. Or maybe we'll just sleep forever. Either way, we won't be a threat to anyone. The final entry was short. Construction complete. Tomorrow we begin the sleep. We've set up warning beacons on the surface. If anyone finds this place, we hope they'll respect our choice. We cannot let them wake us. We cannot let anyone know what we've become. This is our gift to the galaxy, removing ourselves from it. The screen went dark. Vren stood in silence, his mind racing. The entire colony had put itself to sleep. 15,000 enhanced humans locked in stasis chambers buried beneath their ruined city. We need to leave, Vren said quietly. Right now. We seal this place back up and we never speak of it again.